This is Rostra, the St. Theodore Guerin Junior Classical League podcast, where we bring the lessons of classical study into the light for the benefit of all. Welcome back to Rostra. Got a neat episode this time, and especially in the light of when I think this episode will come out, it will be after the United States presidential election. So it's going to be interesting to talk about this topic in light of that. We got Harrison Street with us. Harrison, what is the topic and why did you pick it?
The topic is the year of the four emperors, and I picked this topic because I've always wanted to know more about the ruling power in the Roman Empire, and it's always kind of changed a lot over the course of that and the kingdom and stuff. So I just want to know more about that. Yeah, and it depends on your high school program or whatever. A lot of high schools we tend to focus maybe a little bit more on the Roman Republic. The Roman Empire is so fascinating and such a big period of history, and there's so much good stuff there. Already the title is, and we're going to ignore that bell. It is one of the things that happens when you record during the school day. So, the year of the four emperors. That right away sounds strange, because don't you usually just have one emperor at a time? Yeah, it wasn't one emperor at the time, but there's four different emperors. It was a lot of uncertainty and a lot of violent times during that year.
Yeah, so first of all, what year was that? When was that?
69 AD.
Year 69 AD, okay. So, truly, most of the time there was just one emperor. So why were there four in this one particular year?
So, first, there's four because there's, many of them died. So, first off, the first emperor before the year 69 AD died of a suicide. And then the next ones came in. They're all very not so great rulers, so people didn't like them, caused all uprising and stuff. And a lot of them died, got assassinated, some killed themselves, just like the one before.
Okay.
Very violent.
Okay. So as you said that at the beginning, because there's some unrest and uncertainty and that sort of thing. Walk us just real quickly. First off, who were these four guys? What were their names?
The four emperors in order were Galba, Otho, Vitellius, and Vespasian.
Yeah, so Galba, Otho, Vitellius, and Vespasian. And can you give us a little bit maybe about each of these guys?
Yeah, sure. So the first one was Galba, and was elected the first emperor of the year, and he was very unpopular. He was very aggressive and not aggressive. He kind of lied to a lot of the military about stuff that he promised to them, and they didn't really like that, and they just went out and kind of killed him in the forum because they didn't like that, and he just wasn't that great and wasn't really nice to his government.
Not so much. And in Rome, the military is so important. The Rome at that time, you can't get by with mistreating the Roman soldiers. Yeah. That is never going to go well. So bad guy, okay. That doesn't last long. We go from Galba, the next guy we go to Otho. What's the deal with Otho?
Okay, so after Otho, after Galba's murder, Otho comes in and the Senate quickly recognizes him Otho as the emperor, hoping he would bring stability. However, he was doing a lot of stuff. Wait, hold on, my bad. Anything. Yeah, he tried to do a lot of things to help attempt to stop all the unrest in the country, to attempt to avoid a civil war. He offered many peace treaties and even proposed to marry the next guy that's going to come after him's daughter. Yeah. But then he faced a defeat after the Battle of Beckerim, choosing not to prolong the conflict. He committed suicide after his 3-month rule, so it's very short.
Yeah, it's very short. Yeah. It was just an absolute disastrous situation, and one in which it just absolutely wasn't necessary.
Yeah.
And there's so much we could go into just on Otho, but there really was no reason for that. But he absolutely gave up regarding after that defeat, and it quite frankly wasn't that bad a defeat. It just was bad situation. He did not need to do that. And I'll say this, did you find, before we go on to the next two guys, did you find any information about who wrote about these guys? Did you find anything about the Roman historian? So the Roman historian Tacitus is the guy who writes about these guys. And he tells the story, and again, Otho, that was a bad situation. He did not need to do, not that anybody ever needs to commit suicide. I mean, that's horrible to begin with. But certainly it wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
He basically just threw in the towel. So you go from Galba to Otho. What about Vitellius?
So Vitellius, he came in after Otho's suicide pretty quickly, and he headed to Rome because he wasn't in Rome at the time.
Right.
He received much backlash about how he spent money and like how he was in the government. So
Yeah.
and he just kind of ignored these, and he indulged in a lot of stuff and spent a lot of the government money in depleting the treasury. And when the debts mounted, he quickly started killing people who like really wanted him to pay back and stuff. And so he like killed a lot of citizens, and people didn't really like him that much. So then he was eventually assassinated because he was just so unpopular and stuff.
Anytime you start that sort of tyrannical rule where you're actually killing your own people, again, this does not go well.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons I think a podcast like this is important and studying history is so important, you've got to learn from the past. How did he not know his own history? This happened with Julius Caesar. Quite frankly, not that long before. We're only talking about 100 years, roughly, before Vitellius. And so when a guy starts acting tyrannically, it doesn't go well. Here he goes and does the same thing. So he's not learning from history. Bad situation. And then comes along Vespasian. Talk to us about Vespasian.
Yeah, so Vespasian, so he was, like, he came in once, like, the rule in Rome was, like, very, very unstable, and legions in Egypt, Judea, Syria declared Vespasian emperor, which doesn't really make sense, but...
Mm-hmm.
So, he, like, traveled around the world a lot more from my research. He, like, traveled to Alexandria to secure Egypt's current supply, had a lot of allies in other countries and stuff, but in October, he got defeated at the second battle at Bedricum, and surrounded and unable to rally support, he just attempted to negotiate, but was ultimately killed when Vespasian's forces entered Rome, burning the Temple of Jupiter.
The thing about Vespasian, and you mentioned him being in different places, he was a military man.
Yeah.
He was a general. His soldiers loved him, and he was a tough, no-nonsense kind of guy. He finally was able to bring that kind of stability that Rome needed and had been looking for with the other three guys. Did you find out in your research then kind of how long his reign lasted?
Yes, I did. He became, on December 21st, 69 AD, he became emperor. Mm-hmm. And he had something called the Flavian dynasty, which ruled until 96 AD.
Yes, so he himself then ruled, I think, for about 10 years, and then his sons ruled after him. And some of his sons weren't really great, but at least you did have a period of stability there, which is what you were looking for. I mentioned at the beginning of this, we've come out of the U.S. presidential election, and certainly leading up to and so forth. Everybody gets all bent out of shape about American politics and how crazy it is, and there's so much confusion and all this kind of thing. I'm going, man, that doesn't hold a candle to the stuff of the ancient world. I mean, can you even imagine, in our case, going through 4 separate presidents in 1 year? So tremendous amount of unrest there. So just kind of bringing that back, is there anything else about these guys in particular that you're wanting to say, to share with everybody? There's something I'm going to mention about one of these guys in a moment, but anything else you found in your research you want to make sure people know about?
Yeah, I just want to say, like, the last Emperor Vespasian kind of just brought, like, stability and, like, helped, like, bring down all the unrest and stuff. That's, I think, is really important to know.
And again, I think a lot of that has to do with the fact he was a strong military commander. Yeah. So he knew how to be in charge. He knew how to get things done. He knew how to lead people. And, when we elected President Eisenhower in the United States, military guy, they got things done. We're like, okay, this is a good kind of person to have in charge. And obviously that doesn't always work. Ulysses S. Grant was a military guy and led the side of the North, and then most people say he really wasn't a great president. So sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. That I mentioned that historian Tacitus. He had a funny line about Emperor Otho. He said he would have been a good emperor if he had never actually been emperor.
Yeah.
He's one of these guys that, like, if you looked at him on paper, you would have said, oh, this guy's got all the credentials and everything, but you get the guy in actual office and not so good. So, Harrison, thank you so much. That was a great episode, and I'm sure folks are going to enjoy that. Thank you for listening to Rostra. You may check out all our episodes on Spotify and follow us on social media at GarinJCL. That's at GUERINJCL.